So Marcin, you have been one of the editors of the Procure4Health Action Plan. I mean, it has been collaborated or done in collaboration with our procurers, but yeah, you need always people who edit the things that are being put into the action plan. Can I ask you if you would need to do that exercise again, and it was quite a long process, what would you do differently?
Yes, it was a lengthy process, that's very true, though there were so many stakeholders, so many people to work on that, since the project is quite big.
No.
So I think that it was quite difficult to somehow manage that. So probably I would start with better planning. I'm not saying like order to everybody, but slightly better planning. This is one. The second is something that came to my mind when I read the final version, which is that probably I would change accents. So the content-wise, it's all right. I like that. So I'll probably change some things left or right just a bit.
What do you mean by accent? Can you explain a bit?
Yeah, so I think that, for instance, if you do sustainability projects, you don't do them for sustainability, you do them to achieve something, and it should be sustainable.
Yeah,
so from that perspective, I would say that slightly changing the accent, because sustainability is such an important issue. So there's like no question about that. So I would change it slightly.
Right, okay, thank you.
All right, so let's ask you then. There were two versions, like the first one and the second one. And how did the second one change? What was better, or how you perceive the second version in light of the first version?
Well, I think naturally one document that is quite complex and quite long gets, at least to some extent, better the more often you edit it. I mean, that has a limit, I think. And I think that happened with the action plan. So version 1 was, I think, also for us who edited it, was a kind of way to express what we think and how we digest the different topics. So I think some chapters were, I wouldn't say unnecessarily lengthy, but were not brought to the best point you can get it to. I think that is one main difference from version 1 of the action plan to version 2, that it is far more concise.
It is, definitely.
And due to that, it is far shorter. And I think that is a very important point, because when people who are normally very busy people and the decision makers who ought to read that document are very busy, if they open that document and see 100 pages document open, then they probably close it immediately. Now they see only, I think it is 50 pages or so. I guess that kind of motivates you a bit more, even though it is still long. So that is one thing, the length and the conciseness of the language and of the points we wanted to bring across. The second thing is, and actually that is more important, so I should have mentioned that as the first point, is that we ask for feedback. We had the first version ready in around end of last year, I think.
Yeah, like November.
Yeah, I think so. And then we asked for feedback. One is from our procurers inside the project, although that was not really in a structured manner, because they were the ones who designed it from the beginning. So we were not expecting many or a lot of different feedback now, because they owned it in a way already. But what we did is we went outside to the public to ask procurers from outside the project, so across Europe, to give their feedback on the action plan, no matter what it is, whether they would want to suggest another action area, whether they were suggesting a good practice example they could share, and things like that. And we did that with workshops we organized with procurers and a survey, an online survey. And then we had a consensus meeting of people working on the project and who were quite close to the action plan development. And then this group decided on which suggestions we took on board for the next version. And it was actually quite a lot, so I was quite grateful that we received so much feedback that helped the action plan to become even better in the end, I think,
Can I go back to your first question to add something?
Sure.
So things that I wouldn't change is the open-mindedness of people. So we were,
Right,
we were very different, and everybody has, you know, their own perspective, and we were able to find a solution. And I think that is something that we should never ever lose. I mean, we should do that way, because then you get a document that is far better than just, you know, if you tell people write this and then that's it, write it this way. So I think that it was, on one hand, it was quite difficult to put them together and, you know, simplify the language. But I think that it was really, it showed the diversity of the whole process.
I guess the two things come together often. If you are open-minded, if you allow other perspectives to shape the document, then it necessarily becomes maybe not difficult, but challenging to bring together all the different views, of course. But I would agree. I still would go through all the challenges again, but keep the open-mindedness rather than doing it the other way around. So, yeah. I mean, the project has ended or is close to being finished now. What would be your personal wishes when it comes to the action plan? So what would you want, or how would you want the action plan to evolve beyond the end of the project, which is often quite challenging with project products. They often die when the funding ends. So what would be your wishes?
I would like somebody to question it. And it will force us to rethink what we did or prepare better arguments. Like, no, we are right, sorry, we are right. Or no, actually good, thank you for telling us that. So I think that it would be good that we keep that open-mindedness and be prepared to make adjustment and changes. I don't think it will be like a content-wise things, because this is like, probably it will stay. But there are some, let's say, accents that we'll probably put in a different way. So that would be good if it evolved. If it stayed like that for, let's say, the end of the world, it probably wouldn't be a good one. But
I agree. Yeah. I think it's a good sign when people can kind of relate to it. I mean, even if they criticize it, it shows a kind of interest and they want to engage with it somehow. And if they like open it, close it, and then leave it apart, it's probably not a good sign. That's true.
If I ask you, like, what was the most difficult thing during the process, what would you say?
I think it was you.
Okay, okay. So number two, I agree. So like number two, most difficult.
No, what I mean is, and I think we talked about this. We also had like different opinions about certain things in the action plan. Not all the time. I mean, I think
most of the time.
We agreed on many things, but these were the things that you naturally don't discuss. So of course we discussed the things where we disagreed. And that was, of course, not always easy. So you have your standpoint and your viewpoint. You have a certain idea of what the action plan should be in the end. And to muddle through this process was, I think, very rewarding in the end. But going through that process was not always easy. But I think it also reflects what we said before. If you bring, like we tried at least, different procurers in the loop, try to stay open-minded, bring in then at a later stage the external procurers, bring in procurement experts who all have their views and their topics they would like to focus on. It is, of course, not easy to then develop a concise version, and the action plan had to be concise because it is a guidebook to procurers. It's not an academic document that explains everything and arguments and pros and cons. So that, I think, was not so easy, but necessary in the end.
Would you agree that it was very rewarding when people whom we proposed the changes said, yeah, you're right? So there was not like a big fight because somebody wrote something like chapter and it should not be changed. So if we came with the proposal like we should change it this or that way, they didn't have much problem of accepting that or suggesting some other changes.
I think it depended on the kind of the change you were suggesting, and I think it also depended on the person. I mean, and it depended on the, I think, interaction. Maybe for the listeners, the chapters of the action plans are grouped according to the working groups we had in Procure4Health. And in the working groups we had different procurers involved. And when you have a big group that is very engaged, everyone wants really to force his or her views into that action plan. Of course, you have to discuss every change that someone like us suggests, making it maybe a cumbersome process, which kind of can hinder you to discuss it again. So you have time pressures, you have a project timeline. So I think that depended a bit on the nature of the composition of the people who owned the chapter and on the kinds of the changes we suggested. But generally, I think we always managed to find a consensus in the end.
I would say that if everybody agreed with everybody, it would be a bit suspicious.
Yes.
So it's good that we still kept our opinions, but we agreed to a general message that is in the action plan.
Yeah. I mean, that was, I think, also one of the difficulties. You want to bring the opinions into the document, but we had to also make sure that we deliver something on time. Because there were like things we had to do with the action plan also within the time frame of the project, like the endorsement and things like that. So you sometimes also had to do in a dictatorial way, say, okay, we stop this now, which is not a good feeling, obviously, but you have to balance it a bit.
Okay, so I really enjoyed working with you. I like our arguments, but I think that it's a really decent piece of work. And I hope that people also agree with that opinion.
Yeah, I can only give that back. So I enjoyed working with you also a lot, although it was difficult sometimes. And I think, if people need an action plan for whatever topic, you can call on us. Thank you, Marcin.
Thank you.